The Fifth Element wasn't just cinema history, it was a beautiful disaster wrapped in designer chaos, a film that nearly collapsed under its own ambition before becoming legendary. But the real story isn't what you saw on screen. It's what happened behind the cameras, in the costume fittings, during the explosions that went wrong, and in the personal lives that shattered while creating movie magic. From Gary Oldman's shocking confessions to sound equipment that literally broke under Chris Tucker's voice, these are the buried secrets of The Fifth Element that will change how you see this cult classic forever.
Lilu Dallas Multipass.
1. Gary Oldman's hatred revelation. Gary Oldman didn't just dislike The Fifth Element, he absolutely despised it and only recently started talking about why. In interviews from the past few years, Oldman admitted something that stunned fans. He called the entire experience painful and said he felt completely lost throughout filming. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. He didn't audition for Zorg because he believed in the project. He did it as a favor to Luc Besson after Besson produced his passion project, Nil by Mouth. The favor became a nightmare. Oldman later revealed he had no idea what the story was about, couldn't connect with his character, and spent months feeling like a fraud in that plastic haircut. He barely even read the script before saying yes. The performance that fans worship was delivered by an actor who felt miserable every single day on set. Yet somehow his confusion and frustration created one of sci-fi's most memorable villains. Sometimes the best art comes from the worst experiences. 2. Jean-Paul Gaultier's costume disasters. Jean-Paul Gaultier's costumes weren't just uncomfortable, they were dangerous. Chris Tucker's Ruby Rod outfit weighed over 50 pounds and had a rigid metal spine that cut into his back during long shooting days. He couldn't sit, couldn't bend, and by the end of filming he had permanent scars along his spine. Tucker spent entire shooting days leaning against walls and standing in corners, sweating through the fabric without relief. But Tucker's suffering was nothing compared to what happened to the background performers. 3 extras wearing Gaultier's elaborate alien costumes collapsed from heat exhaustion during the opera house sequence. One had to be hospitalized. The Mondo Shawan suits weighed over 80 pounds each with almost no ventilation, turning actors into walking saunas under the studio lights. Gaultier later admitted he designed them for photographs, not for human endurance. The fashion looked incredible on screen, but nearly clawed the people wearing it. Beauty has a price, and in The Fifth Element's case, that price was measured in blood and sweat. 3. Milla Jovovich's breakdown. Milla Jovovich wasn't just playing an alien, she was becoming one, and it almost destroyed her mentally. The pressure of carrying a massive sci-fi epic at age 21, combined with her complicated relationship with director Luc Besson, pushed her to several emotional breakdowns during filming. Cast members later revealed that Jovovich would disappear between takes, crying in her trailer for hours. The weight of being the perfect being while dealing with her real-life imperfections became overwhelming. She was learning an invented language, performing dangerous stunts, and watching her director's marriage fall apart because of their relationship. What made it worse was that she performed nearly every fight scene herself, training in martial arts and wire work, enduring bruises and exhaustion until the shots felt authentic. In recent interviews, Jovovich admitted there are scenes in the film that still make her cry because they captured genuine pain, not just acting. The ethereal performance that made her famous was built on authentic suffering. Sometimes the camera captures more truth than anyone intends. 4. The real marriage scandal. The love triangle between Luc Besson, his wife Mai Wen, and Milla Jovovich wasn't just tabloid gossip. It was a devastating betrayal that played out in front of the entire crew. Mai Wen, who played the blue diva Plava Laguna, had to watch her husband fall in love with another woman while she performed in full alien makeup. What made it even more intimate was that Besson had invented the divine language for the film, over 400 words of alien vocabulary. He and Jovovich used this language for private notes, secret whispers, even love letters no one else could read. It became their secret code spoken between scenes while Mai Wen watched from the sidelines. Crew members described an atmosphere of tension so thick it affected everyone's performance. The professional became personal, and the personal became professional poison. By the time filming wrapped, Besson had left his wife for his leading lady, But the emotional wreckage was captured forever in the film. The sadness in Mai Wen's voice isn't acting. It's a woman watching her marriage dissolve in real time. 5. When real fire became real terror. The Opera House explosion wasn't just the biggest indoor blast ever filmed. It almost became the biggest tragedy in cinema history. What the crew didn't know was that the pyrotechnics team had miscalculated the blast radius. When those charges went off, the explosion was 3 times larger than planned. This wasn't CGI trickery, it was a full-scale practical detonation with one chance to get it right. Chunks of concrete flew into the crew area. Camera operators dove for cover. One grip was knocked unconscious by flying debris. The entire set filled with smoke so thick that people couldn't find the exits. Dozens of cameras captured the chaos from every angle, while fire marshals scrambled to maintain safety. For 10 terrifying minutes, nobody knew if everyone had survived. Luc Besson later admitted he thought he had accidentally killed his own cast and crew. They kept filming because the alternative was admitting they had almost committed manslaughter for a movie scene. 6. Bruce Willis's secret. Hatred and near walkout. Bruce Willis wasn't the confident action hero he appeared to be. Behind the scenes, he was fighting with Luc Besson almost daily and threatening to walk off the production. The conflict started with the script, which Willis thought was incomprehensible nonsense, and escalated when he realized how much physical comedy was required. Willis had signed up to be a tough guy, not a comedic straight man to Chris Tucker's screaming radio host. Even after filming began, tensions flared between Willis and Besson, with the star frustrated by long hours and unconventional directing methods. At one point, he seriously considered leaving the project entirely. Multiple crew members reported heated arguments, with Willis demanding script changes and threatening to breach his contract. Besson had to fight to keep him, insisting only Willis could balance the absurdity with grounded humor. The easy chemistry between Corbin Dallas and Li Lu was actually the result of extensive reshoots after Willis initially refused to do romantic scenes with Jovovich. The performance that fans love was extracted from an actor who wanted to be anywhere else but that set. 7. The studio sabotage plot. Columbia Pictures. Executives didn't just doubt The Fifth Element, they actively tried to sabotage it. Internal memos that surfaced years later revealed a coordinated effort to minimize the film's budget and marketing support, because studio heads thought it would be an embarrassing flop. They cut the advertising budget by 40% 3 months before release, refused to pay for international publicity tours, and even considered releasing it directly to video in some markets. The studio's own distribution team was told to expect minimal returns and plan accordingly. What made it more ironic was that this French production, filmed entirely in English at Pinewood Studios with American stars, was the most expensive movie France had ever produced. Besson knew he needed global reach to justify the massive budget, so he made strategic choices to ensure international distribution. When The Fifth Element became a cult phenomenon despite their sabotage, those same executives took credit for believing in the vision all along. 8. The occult conspiracy theories. The Fifth Element's spiritual symbolism wasn't accidental, and it triggered a hidden war with religious organizations that lasted for years. Multiple Christian groups petitioned to have the film banned, claiming it promoted occult practices and ancient Egyptian mysticism. They weren't wrong. Luc Besson had deliberately incorporated sacred geometry, alchemical symbols, and references to Egyptian mystery schools throughout the production design. The Mondoshawan ship designs weren't just futuristic. They were based on Egyptian temple geometry, with rounded tops and thick bases pulled directly from pyramid proportions and sun worship carvings. The implication was clear. Maybe aliens didn't just visit Earth, maybe they were the pyramids. Li Lu's orange outfit contained mathematical sequences related to sacred geometry. Even the film's title referred to classical alchemical elements, plus a fifth element representing consciousness or spirit. Religious protesters showed up at premieres in several countries, and some theaters received bomb threats. The controversy was quietly suppressed by the studio to avoid further negative publicity. 9. The technical disasters that broke equipment. Chris Tucker's Ruby Rod wasn't just loud, he was technically destructive. On set, Tucker's shrieks were so high-pitched and powerful that the sound equipment literally couldn't handle them. His improvisations spiked microphones, distorted recordings, and forced audio engineers to completely rebalance tracks. Some takes were completely unusable because the audio simply clipped beyond repair. The sound department worked overtime trying to capture his performance without losing the manic edge that made it special. Meanwhile, Zorg's all-in-one weapon created its own chaos when the prop department built a working flamethrower that nearly torched the entire set during testing. The flames shot too high, licking across the ceiling while crew members scrambled with fire extinguishers. What audiences saw as sci-fi spectacle was actually a series of technical disasters that pushed every department beyond their limits. 10. The sequel that destroyed careers. The sequel to The Fifth Element existed. It was written, partially filmed, and then destroyed in one of Hollywood's most expensive cover-ups. In 2005, Luc Besson began production on a follow-up that would have revealed Lilu's true origins and introduced new elements beyond the classical four. Sony invested $200 million in pre-production, built massive sets, and began filming with a cast that included returning actors and new additions. Then everything went wrong. Bruce Willis's demanding contract negotiations delayed filming for months. Milla Jovovich became pregnant and couldn't perform the physical requirements. Gary Oldman refused to return unless his character was completely rewritten. But the final blow came when early test footage leaked online and fan reaction was overwhelmingly negative. The film looked cheap compared to the original, and the magic was gone. Sony quietly shut down production, destroyed the sets, and buried all footage. The $200 million loss was written off as a tax deduction, and everyone involved signed NDAs. The sequel's failure was so complete that even mentioning it became career poison in Hollywood. 11. The miniature mastery versus CGI lies. Those dizzying cityscapes with flying cars weaving through neon skyscrapers weren't computer-generated. In 1997, CGI simply wasn't advanced enough for Besson's vision. Instead, the team built dozens of detailed miniature models, handcrafted skyscrapers, tiny traffic lanes, intricate neon lighting systems. They filmed these physical cities using motion control cameras, the same technique pioneered by Star Wars, then layered in digital effects to extend the illusion. What audiences thought was cutting-edge computer animation was actually old-school craftsmanship pushed to its limits. The models were so detailed you could touch them, so real they cast actual shadows. That's why The Fifth Element's future feels more tactile and alive than modern CGI spectacles. Every building, every flying car, every reflection of light was physically created by human hands. The future wasn't rendered. It was built, lit, and filmed like a miniature world that happened to be enormous. 12. The modern tragedy. The Fifth Element's legacy is now trapped by tragedy. Bruce Willis's recent health struggles have made any reunion impossible. But that's just the beginning of why this universe will never return to screens. Luc Besson's legal controversies have made him untouchable for major studios. Milla Jovovich has stated publicly that she would never work with Besson again under any circumstances. Gary Oldman considers the character of Zorg buried forever. Even Jean-Paul Gaultier has refused licensing requests for costume reproductions, claiming the original designs were too dangerous to recreate. The rights to the property are tied up in legal battles between Sony, Besson's production company, and the estate of comic book creator Jean-Claude Mézières. Modern Hollywood's obsession with reboots and sequels has met its match in The Fifth Element's cursed production history. Sometimes the most beloved films are meant to remain untouchable, frozen in time as perfect disasters that could never be repeated. The Fifth Element wasn't just a movie. It was a collision of creative forces that produced something miraculous and destructive at the same time. Behind every iconic moment was pain, conflict, and near disaster. The performances we love came from actors who often hated their experience. The spectacular visuals nearly called the people creating them, while sound equipment broke under the strain of recording them. The love story on screen was built on a real-life betrayal that destroyed a marriage. The costumes that looked like fashion statements were actually torture devices. The explosions that thrilled audiences almost became real tragedies. Yet somehow, all that chaos and suffering created something timeless. The fifth element endures not because it was perfectly made, but because it was perfectly imperfect. It's a reminder that the greatest art often comes from the most difficult circumstances, and that the movies we treasure most are usually the ones that almost never got made at all. The real fifth element wasn't love or consciousness. It was the beautiful madness of human ambition refusing to accept the impossible.